Oh, well, thank you. I would like to first acknowledge the land that we are on belongs to the Tontaquan of the Ganachari people, and I would like to give thanks to allowing us to be on your land and um, to give thanks to the Ganachari of the Tontaquan, Gunash. So my name's Irene Dundas. I am Zakweti killer whale from the house that anchored the village. My Tlingit name is Kathla, and I am Nechadi Yatki, which means I am the child of a Nechadi. That's the highest honor that you can give your father's people. I'm acknowledging that I am a child of the Nechadi. I come from the house that anchored the village of Cake Kwan. I had grown up in Saxman and Cake, and my Tlingit name means, so the area that my people are from, the Zakweti people, there is a big red or yellow cedar tree there, and my Tlingit name means where the women birth their children. And so in that area there is a place where there's a big yellow cedar tree, and the women would go birth their children in that area. So my Tlingit name is Kathla. I have worked with NAGPRA and Repatriation for about 24 years, originating at Kate Fox Corporation. And for about 21 years, I was the repatriation coordinator, a repatriation program manager, and then for several years, I was the executive director for Kate Fox Heritage Foundation, where I continued the work of doing repatriation and research. So for about 24 years, I worked for Kate Fox, and then I went to Ketchikan Indian Community, where I ran for tribal council and was on tribal council for several years. And then I was the president of Ketchikan Indian Community for about 11 years. And I'm now working for KIC as the cultural resources coordinator, and I do work for researching artifacts. I'm continuing the work for NAGPRA, and one of my duties is to infuse culture into the tribe, but also infuse culture to the community. So I'm tasked with a big task, which I absolutely love. I also, quite recently, I've been honored to serve for the Smithsonian, the National Museum of Natural History, on the Repatriation Review Committee, and I'm very, very honored by that appointment. The Tribal Council had appointed me to that position about a year ago, and I was informed maybe about 6 months ago that I was appointed to that committee, and I'm very, very honored by that. And so I'm here, and I'm very thankful for the university for asking me. It's an honor to be here and to share about repatriation and NAGPRA and about the people of this area, and more specifically the Ketchikan, Saxman, the people, the Tongas and the Sanyaquan. So I will go on to my presentation, and we'll start off with this first slide. So repatriation of clan objects and human remains, relationships between tribes, museums, and much more. So NAGPRA is the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, and repatriation under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act allows tribal governments to have a legal path to seek control and custody over cultural items. And cultural items are associated funerary objects, unassociated funerary objects, sacred objects, objects of cultural patrimony, and human remains. I'll explain a little bit about some of those items. Associated funerary objects is any cultural item that is placed with a deceased person at the time of death, and they are buried or they are cremated with the person. Unassociated funerary objects is usually any cultural item that is with a person upon death, and that is any cultural object that is laying in state when the person is laying there and has passed, and they have cultural items that are surrounding them. Those are usually unassociated funerary objects. That also could be some totems too. Sacred objects is usually objects that are like the clan hats that people see in ceremony. There are these wooden helmets, anything like chilcat blankets or chilcat tunics. Those are sacred objects. And objects of cultural patrimony is usually an object that is used in ceremony, such as totem pole raisings, maybe there's a new house that is erected, name giving, and usually a memorial potlatch like a ku'ich. Those are any of those objects that are used in those kind of ceremonies is usually objects of cultural patrimony. And of course, human remains, either in cremation or an actual physical body like bones, or sometimes in this part of the area there can be human remains are in full intact with skin and the paraphernalia of the shamans surrounding them. So a brief history of Saxman and the Ketchikan Tlingit. Sonyaquan and the Tontaquan united for education. In 1894, the Tlinkits of Cape Fox Village and Tongass Village joined together and moved to Saxman, 50 miles north of their homelands. Sheldon Jackson and the Presbyterian Mission facilitated to build a schoolhouse and a church in a new location. Louis Paul Sr., Samuel Saxman, and a man named Edgar died searching for a new location for both the villages. The Tongass and Cape Fox Tlinkits had been traveling to and from Port Simpson to get educated and to learn more of the gospel, which they had already been doing for 17 years prior to their move. So Ketchikan and Saxman is located, I consider Ketchikan and Saxman like a border community. We are the last island or the last community that is to the Canadian border. And more so, Cape Fox Village and Tongass Village, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump down to Port Simpson. And Port Simpson was like a little hub. There was in the 1900s, they had a lot of trading going on. There was a lot of ministers that were in that area. There was school teachers. Ketchikan was, or this area, or Southeast Alaska, was in raw form. There wasn't a whole lot of people in this area. And so the people of Tongass and the people of Cape Fox would go to Port Simpson on a regular basis to trade and to get to learn more. So they were going down there to try to seek education and to learn more about the Christianity, the different kinds of Christianity that was in this area. In 1899, the Harriman expedition explored Alaska for 2 months. The expedition brought along renowned scientists, artists, naturalists, and a photographer to document Alaska. In the summer of 1899, the Harriman expedition embarked near Cape Fox Village, where Edward Harriman, the railroad tycoon, suggested to have a lunch on the white sandy beach of Cape Fox Village. At the time, Mr. Harriman directed the boat crew to dig up some totems and a whole house to take back to the States and donate to museums across the country. The effort was strenuous, and Harriman requested all the guests aboard the steamer partake in the looting of the village. And here's the Harriman expedition in Cape Fox Village. Cape Fox, some of you might have been down there if you're locals from Ketchikan. It's a very beautiful location. It has a beautiful white sandy beaches, similar to Hawaii. Beautiful location. What's also different about Cape Fox Village is that there is no water source. So they had to go to another location to get a water source. And this is the whole Harriman expedition, including the crew and some of the scientists that were aboard. So when the Harriman expedition went to Cape Fox, they had taken these pieces. The totem pole on the far left, that was taken to Cornell. We have the totem pole kind of off to the far left of that picture is a little bear kind of sticking out, looks like a house on top. That totem pole was taken to the Harvard Peabody Museum in Boston. The totem pole or the house post on the right is a picture of is an eagle house post, and that was taken to the Smithsonian in the Bronx. There's actually another. These are house posts, so there was two of these, and that was those two were taken to the Smithsonian in the Bronx. Down at the bottom on your left, the totem pole and the house was taken to the Smithsonian in the Bronx also. When I went to New York, I don't know, back in 1998, the totem pole that is in front of this house, that totem pole was actually sitting outside probably for 100 years. And the house actually went to the World's Fair in Chicago and was on display, and for the New York Zoological Society for a little while. In the middle there is Harriman, or they put display some of the artifacts that were inside the houses, and those we cannot find. The picture next to it with the couple holding the sun masks, those we cannot find. That is Edward Harriman and his companion, and I believe that those two pieces were destroyed in the fire from the Harriman estate. And the next piece is the Cott's house post that is was at the Burke Museum, and that is the Cott's child holding Cott's in his hand, where you see the Cott's bear cub is holding the human in his mouth. And there is there's two pieces, or there's two totem poles that are not included in this, and that is the totem pole from the Chicago Field Museum, and then there was another pole that was in California, but that got destroyed in the fires during the earthquake. And I don't believe I put on here, oh yes, the Cornell pole, okay. So, a healing journey to full circle. In 1994, the investigation of the missing totems from Cape Fox Village began. So this was a huge, huge effort. I was 19 years old, and I was a receptionist for Cape Fox Corporation, and I was doing, I think, part-time work for the village store out in Saxman. And my supervisor, or the CEO of Cape Fox Corporation at the time, had tasked me to, okay, so he had purchased a tunic from a gentleman that was walking on the street downtown Ketchikan, and the tunic was made by my grandmother Martha Shields and my aunt Vinnie Martinez, and my grandmother had passed away, and the tunic is beautiful. And anyways, my supervisor, the CEO, Doug Campbell, had purchased this tunic from he was acquaintance, and brought the tunic back to Cape Fox and asked me to research how I can like mount it up onto the wall. Well, I didn't know. I was 19 years old, working a part-time position, and so I researched how to mount the tunic. I called the museum and asked, the museum, how do we go about doing this? Well, my boss was, I guess, really impressed with my research, and it must have been a couple weeks later, he asked me to read the Native American Graves Protection Repatriation Act, NAGPRA, which was passed in 1991 by Congress and then signed by President Bush #1. And I read that law, I want to say at least 50 times. I didn't understand exactly what the deal was. I was 19 years old. I was supposed to be off in college. I actually applied to go to the Seattle Art Institute, and then my backup was to go into the Air Force. And so neither of that happened, because this turned my life around. I read that act, and then I got a dictionary, and I memorized it basically. And then my boss, Doug, handed me the book Time Remembered, and this book was done in 1994 to commemorate Cape Fox Corporation and the shareholders. So this book was done by John Granger, and in 1984 there was elders alive who were able to recite their history, give information about themselves, and the book is absolutely fabulous. John Granger was very wonderful about documenting the layout of the village. He interviewed, the people that were alive at the time. And then my supervisor then handed me the Harriman Expedition book and said, so you read the NAGPRA law. Do you think that we can get any of these artifacts back that are in this book? Well, I didn't know. So I read through that book, and we, back then, in goodness sakes, 1994, there was no internet, there was no cell phones. It was you picked up a phone and you called. And so what I did is I took that book and I got out key names that went on the Harriman Expedition, and I went to the back, and Edward Curtis said he was from Seattle, and so I called the Burke Museum. John Muir said he was associated with Chicago, so I called the Chicago Field Museum. I called the Boston or the Harvard Peabody Museum, and they, when I called the museums, I said, do you know if you have a totem pole in your collection? And some of them said, yes, we have a totem pole in our collection, and would you like the catalog record? Yes, I would like the catalog record. So then they send photographs and the catalog record. Even this led me to calling the ambassador of France, which is appointment by the President of the United States. I ended up calling Pamela Harriman in France and asking her if so she was married to a Harriman, because she was also a Churchill. She was married to a Harriman, and her in-laws So I ended up calling actually the Harriman Estate in New York, which they have a big foundation, and that foundation actually funds the cardiology research center in Cornell, which is very well known, and I have no clue about any of this. And they ended up, the family ended up directing me to Pamela, and Pamela said, well, you know, I didn't get any of the estate. I only inherited all the money. And so I was like, okay. So I didn't know, you know, I was like, well, there's still things I don't know what to do. I still needed some leads. She did tell me that the Harriman family had a warehouse that had many cultural items, or Alaska items from this journey or from this expedition that had burnt up. And so that's where I think that some of the pieces had went, some of the smaller pieces had went, it just got burnt up in the storage. So it was like researched to identify clans, clan names, clan crests, clan stories, and migration started at ground zero. The totems that were looted occurred 40 years before the elders of the village were even a twinkle in their parents' eye. In 1994, I took an assessment of what the clans and clan members were remaining in Saxman and in Ketchikan, and what Kwan, where they were from. The remaining elders that I had interviewed were Elizabeth Denny, Sonia Kwan Tekwedi, Esther Shea, Tanta Kwan Tekwedi, Mary Jones, Sonia Kwan Nechadi, Martin Perez Sr., Sonia Kwan, and Dorothy Utterberg, Sonia Kwan. I was conducting interviews on a day-to-day basis to acquire as much knowledge as I can, as I knew time was not on our side. So here is the village of Cape Fox, and in the background you can see faintly, I'm sorry it's not that great of a picture, and then you see a drawing that is on the left. That drawing, I believe, was done by John Muir. And then there is a layout, a picture that I taken that is the layout of what John Granger had put together in 1994 for Cape Fox Corporation. And I apologize that the picture isn't great, but John Granger's layout, actually, when he did when he interviewed those elders, he was able to record their some of their Tlingit names, the clan houses, and you could see the whole layout of the village right there on Kirk Point. So what I did is I ended up taking the photographs that Edward Curtis had taken, and the layout that John Muir had done, and kind of pieced all of that together. And then when I was able to identify the photographs in the time remembered by Cape Fox, you could kind of put together, if you could see, or if you look down kind of towards the bottom of the page, there is the one totem pole that I said that looked like had a house and the little bear sticking out of it. Well, if you line that up with John Granger's layout of the village, you could basically put together and puzzle each house and what name and clan house all of those were. So that was a huge, huge discovery, and just amazing, because the elders that I was interviewing, bless their hearts, they were alive when they moved from Cape Fox Village to Saxman. And so this was a really, really big discovery. So this is Mary Jones, Esther Shea, and Elizabeth Denny. So these gals were, I interviewed them on a day-to-day basis. Mary Jones was phenomenal at researching her clan lineage. So Mary is, like I said, was Nechari Sanyakwan. She had did such extensive research on her family that she would pull up court documents. She researched her family that lived in, or her great aunt that lived in, or not lived, was taken as a small little girl to Carlisle, the boarding school, and she was excellent. She also has relations to the Marsden family, the Kinnanook family, and she was able to document all of that, and she was very, very meticulous. Now Esther, she's, Tontaquan Taquati. She was excellent at identifying all the place names in this area. So, just talking about it makes me tear up. So Esther, she took the Goldschmidt and Haas notes and the Waterman notes that the Forest Service had, and she had translated, and she marked down. So Ketchikan, the Ketchikan area, has the largest inventory of place names in all of Southeast and that is Esther Shea and the work of the Forest Service, and that is amazing. Now Elizabeth Denny, she's Taquati Sanyakwan. She had just passed a couple years ago. So her husband was Joe Denny, and he was the last speaker for his people, the Nechari people. Now she was very, very, very traditional. She was sharp as a tack. She took her role as not only as a Tlingit woman just within her people, but she was the Taquati Tlingit woman who was married to a Nechari man who had a high standing. And she, I guess, I think when people think, you like today, I guess, if you were to say, do you remember who your cousins are? Their first names and last names, maybe their middle names. But when you have extended family, do you know your extended family's first names and last names? Well, in Tlingit way, you don't just, it was something that you already knew, like it was an obligation. It was just something that she knew. So she knew not only her family's Tlingit names, but she also knew her opposite clan's Tlingit names. I asked her, I was in an interview one day, and I said, Elizabeth, I'm really stuck on this gal named Elizabeth Long. And, how is she related to you? And this must be like in 1999. And she said, yeah, Elizabeth Long, she's related. And then she gave her Tlingit name, and then she said she lived by me about 30 years ago, and her phone number is 54836. And I was like, oh my goodness sakes. Like, so she even remembered Elizabeth Long's phone number. And so she just was amazing, sharp as a tack. And she also got on me about Tlingit pronunciation. She would say, Irene, say it to me again. And of course I could never say it like she could say it, but she was pretty amazing. So all these gals worked together to build a excellent repository of information that had helped, in this time today. So one of the things that we had, this is some of the things that we had identified is we identified Cape Fox Village, what the name of Cape Fox Village, the actual place name. We broke down the clans, what clans were in Cape Fox Village, what clans were in Tongass Village, and she explained that Cape Fox Village is, the actual place name of Cape Fox Village is, the name is called Gosh, which means powder, because when you go up to Cape Fox Village, or when you're embarking on Cape Fox Village, the sand is like powder on that beach. And so we also have Martin Perez, and Martin, he's Tequati Sonia Kwan, and he would always say, you know, I don't know much about this cultural stuff, and he did. So he's Sonia Kwan Tequati, and he would come and interview with me, and he would bring his wife, and he said, he would always say, you know, I was fishing all the time, and we would always fish by Loring and Chicats, and we would go into misty fjords, and he would explain about his fishing days, and you know, his mother or his grandmother, and just real precious. So he was a wealth of information too, and just explaining about the day and time, you know, what it was like growing up then. And he didn't realize, you know, that that the fishing grounds that he was going on is his ancestral lands. His uncles would show him where to go, and he would go to those lands, and he was excellent at explaining some of the stories there. Oh, one of the stories that he explained here. So this photograph, the picture in the middle is Clark Starish, or in the census records, his name is Clark Stasht, and it translates into Clark Starish. Clark died in 1900, and Martin explained, he said, you know, I do know one story, and you know, the story that I'm going to share with you now is I guess really precious, and you know, I don't want it to be like a story where it is shameful, but a story that, because it's not, it's a story that gives value, or hopefully gives you an understanding of how much value this land means to our people. So Clark goes up to Chicats. So in Ketchikan, they're, you know, at the tip of, up in Reveille-Gagedo Island, you know, there was an area, Chicats Cove. Some of you in the Ketchikan area probably know that area. Clark's uncle is Chicat. So Chicat is named, or Chicats Cove is named after Chicat, which Chicat is a Nechadi man from the Sonia-Kwan of Cape Fox Village. That's the Saxman people. So Clark goes up to Chicats Cove, or Chicat, where his uncle was living, and he confronts his uncle and says, you know, Uncle, why did you sell this land to the white man? And he was very, very, very upset. This is our clan territory. And Chicat, being a very, very old man at the time, was so embarrassed. And this is not shameful. I want to explain, this is not shameful in any way. Chicat then kills Clark, and because he was so embarrassed that his uncle had to confront him that he sold the land to white man. Then Chicat turned around and went and put on his clan property. He put on his clan regalia and took his own life, because he could not go back to his clan to let them know that they had taken, that he had sold property to the white man. It was a time that, things were moving fast. Alaska was, being discovered. Things were not pretty. And Chilkat was very, very embarrassed that he had sold his clan property. And at the time, I don't know, if some of you know that clan property, like territory, clans would kill over that hundreds of years ago. If you had a good fishing stream, this is your clan property, this is your blood. Our people say that our land is in our blood. It is. And so to me, I feel like, and I share that because I want people to understand that, it wasn't like our people gave up things willingly. It was very hard for the clan, very hard for Clark, and very hard for Chilkat. And, Martin shared that story with me, and I will never, ever forget it. But it's a different time and era now, and I needed to share and to let you know that, that's how it was. So that research was very, very intense, to learn all of that information. We acquired BIA baptismal records, and yes, it was baptismal records. And we acquired the census records from 1900. We couldn't get the 1890 census records because the state of Alaska, there was a large fire. The 1890 census records were burnt up. And we acquired tons of original death certificates. So any tips for people who are trying to research your family line, when you go to the state of Alaska Census Bureau, or no, Vital Statistics, and anything from like 1820 to about 1910, always ask for the state of Alaska to print out the front and back of the death certificate. It is a little bit more expensive, but you should ask for the front and back. The front of the death certificate, explains the normal death certificate information, the family, the person who had passed, what they had passed away of, the date, the doctors, the location, the wife, if she's still alive or if she's not, the husband, if he's still alive or not. But the back of the census, or the back of the death certificate, is really very unique, because in about 1890s, 1880s, 1900s, they were still operating, the Tlingit people were still operating in a system where they respected each other's opposites. So raven, eagle, if there was somebody who passed away that was raven, they would have their the opposites of the eagles come to witness the person who had passed, which means that they would get like clan members of the eagle clan would then say, I am the uncle to the person who passed. And then kind of towards the bottom of the death certificate, on the bottom left of the death certificate, would say any other relatives, living relatives. And they would meticulously say, I am the daughter of the person who passed away. And nowadays you don't have that kind of information on a death certificate. So you could basically go through and if you get a good collection of death certificates, you could build a good family tree record. We then started getting tons of information from other family members in the community. They kind of heard what we were doing, that we were trying to research items from Cape Fox Village, and so people started giving us photographs and things like that. And I kind of put it out to the community that if you know of any artifacts, or if you know of any clan regalia that you don't have anymore, if there's any pictures, please give us a copy. So people started sending us pictures. So then that led to a rediscovery. We established clan house names in Cape Fox Village, identified remaining clans of the Sanyaquan, identified ancestors' Tlingit names of the Sanyaquan, including the Tontaquan names. We researched and assembled 221 family charts or genealogical charts, with some dating back to 1550. The genealogy charts are broken down by individual clans and clan houses, linking present-day clan members to their clan ancestors, or to their ancestors' clan and clan house. So today we can go and use those family tree charts, and we could link ourselves to those charts back in the 1900s and 1800s. And into their clan houses, which is pretty amazing. Cape Fox Corporation, we wrote a grant at the time. Myself and Diane Palmer wrote a grant to link people to their clan houses, and that's what we did. And put them in individually. That's pretty amazing to me. We identified and separated Tontaquan Tequati and Sanyaquan Tequati, because both the Tongass people and the Cape Fox people both have a shared clan, which is the Tequati, and we were able to identify and separate both those Tequati clans individually. We discovered the Bessie Denny and Henry Denny tapes reciting the history of the Sanyaquan people, and Henry Denny and Bessie Denny, bless their hearts, they had brought stories that talk about migration of the Ketchikan, Revill-Gagedo area, Misty Fjords, Beam Canal, and they identify by place names. Bessie Denny, talking in full Tlingit, she talks and says, if you go, and she's just talking to her son on a recorded tape, and she'll say, oh, if you go past this point and you go around here, that's this here, and she names it. And she goes all the way around Revill-Gagedo Island into the Eunuch, Burrows Bay, all the way down to Misty Fjords, and all the way down to Tongass Village, Kenegana and Sit Clan Islands, and goes all the way up around and talks about every single place and names them in Tlingit. And there's some explanations and stories in those tapes, and those are amazing. So in 1899 to 2001, 1998, Smith College announced that they were going to do a recreation of the Harriman expedition, documenting scientific changes in Alaska over 100 years. Cape Fox Corporation initiated consultation with Smith College to coordinate the return of artifacts that had been taken from the Harriman expedition in 1899. So in 1999, Cape Fox Corporation partnered with Dr. Rosita Whirl to draft up and submit 5 repatriation petition claims to Harvard Peabody the Harvard Peabody, Chicago Field Museum, the Burke Museum, Cornell, and the Smithsonian. We were actually supposed to do the Harriman expedition retraced in 1999, but the boat that was supposed to take, or the cruise ship that was supposed to be chartered by the Smith College, ran aground somewhere off the Polynesian Islands, and that did not happen, and it took a couple years to regroup, and so they finally came back to Alaska, and the Harriman Expedition Retraced, 1899 on the cover. That is my nephew Cameron Saludo, and he's actually really not my nephew. In Tlingit way, he is my father. He received my father's Tlingit name, which is Wishkina, and he is wearing my father's clan hat. And that's an example of the clan hat that I was talking about that would be considered a sacred object. So here, the clans, the tribe, and the corporation move forward in meaningful consultation with the museum. Here we are in the Smithsonian in the Bronx. I don't know what year this was. I can't even guess what year it was. Off to the left is my Uncle Harvey Shields. He is the speaker for the Nechari of the Sonyaquan, Cape Fox. There's over the museum that helped. This is actually the National Museum of American Indian, where they their storage was in the Smithsonian or at the Bronx. There's Terry Snowball, and then over to the corner is James Pepper Henry, who was also helping with repatriation. We also have film crew from the Smith College, and over to the right is Marilyn Blair. She was the president of Cape Fox Corporation. Filming is Joe Williams. He was the president of Saxman IRA at the time. My Uncle Harvey Shields, and next to him is Wayne Guthrie, Take-Waity of the Sonyaquan, and Dr. Dan Monteith. He is adopted Take-Waity of the Sonyaquan. They had all come to New York so that we can view the pieces that were taken from the Harriman Expedition. So this is the when Smith College had come to Ketchikan in July of 2001. This was a smooth repatriation. It was a lot of work. You know, Rosita had drafted up the petition of claims. It taken a lot of effort from all kinds of people. So Smith College had to get funding to try to pull off, you know, the Harriman Expedition Retraced, which included scientists in 2001 to document scientific changes in Alaska. And we had coordinated totem poles from Cornell, which is in upper state New York, the totem poles that were in the Bronx. They had to stop by Chicago, pick up a totem pole in Chicago, had to stop by the Harvard Peabody in Boston, and then truck across the United States, and then pick up the totem poles that were at the Seattle Burke Museum, and then get them on a barge or get them on the ship, the cruise ship that landed in Ketchikan. And there we have my Uncle Tom Abbott, my Uncle Richard Shields, Richard Dalton, who is Duc d'Eton from Hoona. He was here, he is the Nakani. And then behind him is Joe Thomas, who is Zakwaiti from Cake, and he is acting as the Nakani. This was a very, very sacred time, or very special time, because we had people who were there who were speaking in Tlingit, welcoming these items back home, and rubbing medicine on the totems when they arrived. So 100 years later, we have Kitty Harriman, who is off to the left with the baby. The great niece of Edward Harriman gifted the Sonia-Quan a hand-sewn quilt that was created by the Harriman relative back in 1804, and that's myself over on the right. I'm holding the Harriman quilt. You see the Harriman quilt in the middle there, and Chuck Denny, who is the current House Speaker of the Take Waity of the Hoots hit of the Sonia-Quan. He's in front of it, or he's behind the quilt. Amends were made in the Sonia-Quan with the Sonia-Quan people and the Harriman family. So her just gifting the gesture of her family quilt, everything was, there was peace. There's no hard feelings, nothing, and that was very, very precious. So she had gifted that to the Cape Fox people. And here is the Harriman expedition retraced in 2001. And we are in Cape Fox Village, right here. Here's my Uncle Harvey welcoming the guest from the Harriman expedition retraced. That is down on the dock here in Ketchikan. Here we have my Auntie Sarah, Richard Dalton, my Uncle Tom Abbott, and Phyllis Onquest. Just looking upon people who are coming off the ship. Here we have my Uncle Joe Williams, President Peterson, my cousin Albert, and my cousin Little Richard Shields. And they are with, or the pole that they're standing in front of is the pole from Cornell. The pole that Cornell had, actually they erected the pole in New York, and they actually left it standing and repaired it many, many times over the years until it just completely fell down and fell to pieces. And so when we repatriated this pole, it was actually in like 7 pieces. And that was held up at the Ted Ferry Civic Center. Right here we have the 2 totem poles, or the 2 house posts, the Eagle house posts that were taken to the Bronx in the Smithsonian. And so that is what they look like when we returned them. They didn't have the wings. When they took them, they didn't, and there was no repairs made to these 2 house posts. Right here, faintly, you could see the house screen in the back. Up front is my friend Kat. That house screen is the house screen. It's actually not even a screen. It's a house frontlet. It is the front house of Chief Thomas Johnson, or in the Time Remembered book from Cape Fox, they call him Chief Big Thomas Johnson. His Tlingit name is Stukane, and he, it's a beautiful house. That house held the 2 cots, house posts that had cots, or the 2 house posts that had the bearer, and the bearers that were holding cots in their mouth. And so the Harriman expedition actually took that whole house, floorboards, sideboards, everything. This was on top of, this is the loon that was on top of one of the totem poles in front of the Chief Thomas Johnson's house. That is the totem pole that went to the Harvard Peabody. That's the totem pole that looked like it had a house on top of it. The pole behind it is the pole from the Smithsonian in the Bronx. That actually, totem pole in the back, that was actually sitting in the Bronx yard for 100 years, exposed to all the elements of New York for 100 years. Faintly in the background, you can see those boards. It looks like a tail with the feet coming out. That's the Eagle tail house board. So this is just a weird coincidence. In 1999, the Harriman expedition, was supposed to be coming back to Alaska. That boat ran aground. Also in 1999, the Saxman Community Hall, or Ketchikan, had a record amount of snow, and the community hall suffered and it collapsed. And all of you who've been out to that Saxman Community Hall, you know that there was these boards that were all around inside. Those actually belonged to the clans that were from Cape Fox Village and Tongass Village. And those were made when the people had moved from Cape Fox and Tongass, and they were put up. Anyways, in 2001, we were surprised that those boards survived the collapse of the community hall. And so we brought out those boards to welcome the totem poles to come home when they returned in 2001. And so here's a picture of some of the pieces. Up, down at the bottom of the screen, you can't see now, but this was a very, very, very sacred moment. I mean, maybe some people thought it was just totem poles that had come home, and that we were going to do a ceremony, of course. But in the beginning of this ceremony, we had my Aunt Cecilia White laying in state. Now, we did not know. So my Aunt Cecilia was coming home. She was the last matriarch of my father's people. So my grandma Martha passed away, and then my Aunt Cecilia, survived there, over the years. And anyways, my Aunt Cecilia was like the dance leader for the Cape Fox dancers on the women's side. And she was planning the trip to come back home because she was sick in Seattle, and she planned to come home. And the day that all these pieces arrived in Seattle, and that's where she was at, that was the day that she had passed. And since she was planning her trip back home, the clan had chose to bring her home with the pieces, or with her clan property. And so the clan had chose to lay her in state to be among her clan property when they were going to now give a happy ceremony. So she still participated in the 100 years of healing ceremony when the artifacts had come home. So, which I don't know how God works all of that, but it was something else. And so here we have the Tongass group singing their spirit song. And clan hats came out, so that is, I believe that is a raven's tailed robe. I'm not sure if that's the mother robe that's in the museum now, that people check out every now and then. But he's, Tom Harris is using the killer whale hat, and that's on, it gets on loan to the museum, and then the clan members take it out for ceremony. That is a replica. There's Chuck Denny and Bob Sam. Here is Tom Harris and Everett Savage. And so full circle. So shortly after the 100 years of healing ceremony, Cape Fox Corporation reached out to each museum that repatriated Sonia Kwan clan property and gifted the museums a red cedar tree as a sign of friendship and appreciation for caring for the precious clan property for over 100 years. So Diane Palmer had reached out to all these museums, and at the time, Cape Fox Corporation was just finishing up doing, their logging. Not much logging is being done in Southeast, anymore. this was the last of the logging days. And Cape Fox had reached out, and we had donated logs to each of the museums. So Nathan Jackson, our Tlingit master carver, well, I call him ours, but you know, we know that he's Tlingit from up north, but we love him so much down here. Nathan Jackson, Tlingit master carver, was commissioned by Harvard Peabody Museum, the Burke Museum, the Field Museum, and the Smithsonian to carve totems from the cedar trees gifted by Cape Fox Corporation. So here is the totem. At the bottom is the Burke Museum pole, and up on top is the totem pole that Nathan had carved, and over to the right is the totem that his son Stephen had done. There is myself, Nathan, Dorica, and over in the background you can see Stephen faintly. And I believe we were in, I don't know if we were in Boston or if we were in Chicago here. This pole in the middle is at the Smithsonian. And that's also the pole that is in the middle of the black and white photo. Here's the poles that were, or the pole that's at the Harvard Peabody Museum, and over to the right is the recarved totem. There's Rosita and Nathan giving a speech at the Harvard Peabody Museum. And the Peabody Museum said this: the totem pole not only represents the Sanyuquan Tequati clan and their history, but revitalizes the relationship between the Sanyuquan and the Peabody Museum. And it did that. It brought us little folks from Saxman and Ketchikan, Alaska to Chicago and to Boston, and me and Esther were traveling, you know, it's an hour and 45 minutes from Ketchikan to Seattle, and then it was like a 3-hour plane ride from Seattle, actually 4 hours from Seattle to Boston. And this was actually a very scary trip, because I believe this was done right after 9/11. And, you know, we were all unsure about that time then. But I got to spend some wonderful time with Esther, and really precious. But these trips, you know, we went on a couple other trips. We went to Chicago, and then, you know, we were in New York. But they arranged for us to even get Oprah tickets at one point in time. And so it was pretty amazing. And, you know, I wasn't out much back then, you know, not traveling around like we are doing nowadays. My cousin Gail Cheney was there. She was going to a school there, so she was there, met us there. And there's the totem pole from Ithaca, New York, or the Cornell pole. The university did not accept the, I can't say they didn't accept, they just did not have another totem pole recarved. The pole in the middle is from the Chicago Field Museum. There you have, down on the right, the new carving. Relationships with the tribe and the museums, and much more. And it was really much more. Discovering additional clan property in museums and private collections, which we did. We not only discovered, you know, the Harriman expedition stuff, but it allowed us to research more. I mean, we felt like we needed more, you know, needed more information, needed more. What else is out there? Because when I went to some of these museums, and they have hundreds, actually not even, it's hundreds of thousands of pieces that are in their collections. Allowed us to reconnect clan members to the strength of our ancestors and culture, helping us to process historical trauma, created learning opportunities for clans and individuals to seek their traditional history, to empower them with the strength of our ancestors, past, present, and future. created additional platform that allows tribes, clans, museums, and federal agencies to collaborate and conduct meaningful consultation and help one another understand their internal process, in turn leading a path to understanding of our cultures, both Western and traditional. Backed with ancestral knowledge allows our clan leaders, tribal leaders to tell it like it is, or like my son would say, drop some knowledge. When meeting with federal, state, and local agencies for issues regarding protection and sustaining our way of life. So learning all of that history of the Unic River, of Chicat, of Misty, of Red Bay, of Walker's Cove, it allowed this present day our tribal leaders to be backed with history that they can go on a national level or on a state level or on a federal level to explain this has been our land since the beginning of time. And so that is what the repatriation has done for this present time. These are some of the pieces that we had rediscovered. We have this beautiful turquoise red clan hat, the Thunderbird hat that belonged to Chief George Cayenne of the Sanyaquan Tequati. Next we have the copper tina that is at the New York Metropolitan Museum. That also belongs to Chief George Cayenne of the Sanyaquan Tequati. And this hat over to the left is the sea bear, or sea monster clan hat. This is from the Tequati of the Tontaquan. In the middle is a killer whale hat, and that hat is believed to have come down the Nass River hundreds of years ago. That hat is at the Calgary Museum in Calgary. And then we discovered quite recently the halibut hat that belongs to the Nikati of the Sanyaquan, and at this time I cannot disclose where that hat is at. So we discovered all those pieces recently. There's actually several more that we discovered, but clan hats are quite sacred, and we are hoping to repatriate those as soon as possible. So all that repatriation and all that history and all that research led to us acquiring a ton of information. I've been to the Library of Congress, our state archives, our Alaska, any archival repository in Alaska we have been to. We had acquired precious notes like the Ronald Olson notes, George Emmons notes. We have some of the Swanton notes, the books. And this particular situation right here this is my daughter, Dorian, and she had come home for Christmas, and on December 24th, we get a email or a letter from it was an email letter from the state of Alaska saying that they want to do some sort of an LNG project down by Keneguna and Sitclan Islands, which is the Tongass people's original home is Keneguna Island, and then across from that is the actual village of Tongass Village. The whole Tongass National Forest is named after the Tongass people, and a company in Canada wants to put a floating barge of gas down on that island. And so we then had to research. My daughter's right here on December 24th. We are researching exactly where Keneguna Island is, what the cultural significance is, what clan it belonged to, and this and that, so that the tribe can actually make an official response back to the state of Alaska, which we found. But she also found this thing, the paper in the middle is, which was interesting to me, is that when the people, because they, a lot of clans lived together in a clan house, and it was very communal. So this document in the middle shows when the clan would dry fish, the way to identify your clan dry fish was the bears would put 3 marks on the side, the ravens would put an X, and that's how you separated it, which she thought, my daughter, and I thought it was pretty cute, because I didn't know that it, got that intense where you would mark your food. Anyways, we had, up on top, we also had learned about the Muybridge collection, which I wish that we would have hosted that Muybridge collection here in Ketchikan with the museum. But we had learned the purple, circle and the blue circle. Those 2 clan hat pieces are at Cooperstown Museum in New York. That's Cooperstown is, where is it, the Hall of Fame, the community where the Hall of Fame Museum is. And the bottom is, my friend, oh, I wish he was still here, Richard Van Cleve had given me this photo of the Tongass people inside the Tired Wolf house. And in the back there, you could faintly see it. There's the Tired Wolf house posts. Those house posts are actually we're standing out in Saxman. It's the wolf that has the tongue that was hanging out. Up on top, you could see what is it? It is the sea monster up on top. You could see the faces, and you see the hands that are off to the side. And then down at the bottom is the Kajuk Bowl. And then faintly in the middle, you could see the woman that's wearing that hat that I had said that was in Calgary. That is the killer whale hat. And then off to the side, that young boy is using the sea monster hat. And from just all those other research records that we were able to obtain, we were able to identify that this had belonged to the people from the Tired Wolf house, which is now the joined together the Tequay people. Right here we have Richard Jackson, James Lanos. Richard Jackson is the speaker of the Tontaquan Cots-Hit Tequay people. James Lanos is the speaker of the Tequay, I want to say Hoots-Koo-Hit of the Sanyaquan. And we have the late George Ridley, who was the speaker of the Ganachadi of the Tontaquan, the Drifted Ashore House. My uncle Harvey Shields, who is the speaker of the Eagle Tail House, of the Nechadi. And we have Nathan Jackson, who is drawing out that's a bentwood box that had come out of Walker's Cove that somebody had brought to the museum, and then they brought it out to Cape Fox for us to do what we needed to do with it. And it's a very unique bentwood box. It held human remains in it. So that also led to us identifying, the community just in Ketchikan, or not just in Ketchikan. There was like a revival of, wanting to know more of who we are. My uncle Clarence Jackson from Cake came down, my uncle Joe Thomas, and we have Carlin Williams and Brooke Trout and her husband and her children there. They had, my uncle Clarence and my uncle Joe had adopted all of them into our clan, and all these people are now Zakwati killer whale from the house that anchored the village in Cake. Right over off to my right is my niece, or my niece's post on social media, and the little hit is my little nephew Grayson Allen Nick, or yeah, Grayson Percy Nix, and she was living with me for a little while, and I would play these recordings, and eventually, you know, she asked me, Auntie, I need to know more about my people. And I sent her this recording of the Sanyakwan Nekhadi's migration, and she is playing it for her little baby, Grayson Percy Nix. And I think faintly you could see my little nephew Troy. They're there listening to their clan history on YouTube. And so it also created, you know, we created 221 family trees that date back to 1550. Here's a young couple who is looking at his family tree, and it's very, very, very extensive. So extensive that I couldn't even put it on a table. We had to lay it out on the floor so that they could really inspect it. And not last year, but the year before, yeah, in 2019, the tribe had given out or gifted these T-shirts out, and it is "Teach Me My History" is what the T-shirt says. And so there has definitely been a revival, and the little campaign that we started was the "I Know Who I Am," "I Know Who I Am" campaign, which encourages tribal members, natives of the area to research who they are, who their family line is, what their clan is, who their parents are, who their grandparents are. That's my little nephew Troy off to the right, and that's my son, the one and only son in the world, Archie, and he's in Anchorage right now playing for state with our K-High Kings. They're actually playing basketball right now against Chugiach. But anyways, we have this little these little kids right here. My little friend Sheila, she had called me up and said, you know, I need to find everything out about my family. And she's a young mom. These are young little kids, and I'm really proud of her. She really researched, and you know, still researching to try to find out their family lines. So the NAGPRA project had led to, you know, more people wanting to know who they are, even though, you know, they might not be Tlingit. We do have a lot of resources that we provide. So right here we have the Unik River. Over on to the left is the Forest Service, and our wonderful John Autry, who is he was a archaeologist for the Forest Service for years, and just precious. We're actually going over an area at this point, I think, to look for a permanent culture camp for the people of this area. And that led to just motivation on Protect the Unik. It's our river. I don't know, and I don't want to be political, but the reason why this is all important is because I believe it's 16 miles up the Unik River past the into the Canadian territory. They want to make one of the 10th largest mines in the world. And I don't know if you know that the Unik River has one of the largest used to host one of the largest king salmon runs in southeast Alaska, and it also used to have a bountiful run of ooligan, and there's little ooligan that's running up there right now. We just sent people up there to the Unik today to go look at it, and there's people monitoring, counting the ooligan. And then there's the team where you can see our faces. And so our ancestors are still guiding us and speaking to us and speaking through us in 2021, and they will continue to do so for the next 7 generations and the 7 generations beyond that, and so on. So there's my friend Jessica's daughter, and she's using the hand that goes across the face is missing murdered Indigenous women and girls, and then my son dancing in the middle with the yellow bordered blanket, and then my 2 girls over to the side, to the right side is Marlena and Dorian is holding my niece Jasmine, Krista Saludo, or Krista Thomas and Billy Joe Thomas's little girl. And so, yes, so it's created a revitalization for NAGPRA has done amazing things in the community and will continue to do so. So thank you. So is there any questions?
So there are no questions. There are a lot of comments like, this is great, this is so interesting, so you'll be able to see it. And in our experience, more comments show up as people have time to sit down and listen to the recording. So it might be something you can check back in on.
Okay, I could do that. I could check back in, yeah. And I'm more than happy to answer. So, you know, just through the night, sometimes I might have a hard time sleeping or something. I really do thoroughly try to answer questions or try to help out as much as I can. People who want more information about their family lines or their clans, I do try to find as much resources as I can or direct you in the right direction if you need more information about your family. I do have resources in Juneau who can help out or who can connect you with the with some of the smaller villages. I do have resources that can connect you to the Simshian families and to the Haida families, and so we do try to help out as much as we can.